The 2003 game Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic KOTOR is regarded as one of the greatest video games ever made, a title it holds with fierce loyalty from fans who revere it as a masterful work of storytelling, character development, and world building. It wasn't just a game, it was a galaxy-spanning adventure that brought Star Wars lore into a new light. This wasn't simply a rehash of the main films or an expansion of familiar stories. KOTOR was unique, both in its narrative depth and its willingness to explore the Star Wars universe in a way that felt daring, fresh, and compelling. Set thousands of years before the events of the films, KOTOR allowed players to discover a Star Wars galaxy that felt at once deeply familiar and yet completely alien. This era was filled with its own political struggles, factions, and legendary Jedi and Sith, some of whom would go on to be immortalized in Star Wars legends. And yet, even with its originality, it maintained a strong connection to the core themes of the Star Wars universe: the battle between light and dark, the struggle for identity, and the moral complexity of war. These were themes that resonated deeply with players and made every decision feel impactful. One reason KOTOR is so difficult to replicate lies in the freedom it offered players. From the moment the game begins, you are thrust into a universe filled with choices. Every decision, whether major or minor, felt like it had consequences, giving players a sense of agency that few games could match. Do you choose the path of the Jedi, protecting the weak and upholding justice, or do you give in to the seductive allure of the dark side, seeking power and control? These weren't just superficial choices, they impacted your character's journey, your relationships with companions, and even the fate of entire planets. It was the player's story as much as it was the character's. The intricate moral complexity woven into every aspect of the game is another reason why KOTOR is so hard to replicate. Most games give players a binary choice between good and evil, but KOTOR transcended this simplicity. The characters and choices were layered, sometimes even uncomfortable, and they forced players to confront the consequences of their actions in a way that felt realistic. For instance, choosing to pursue the dark side wasn't as simple as just being evil. It was a journey marked by sacrifice, often drawing on the player's own empathy for the character's suffering or the allure of wielding immense power. This nuanced approach to morality allowed KOTOR to feel both personal and universal, immersing players in a galaxy where the lines between hero and villain were not always clear. In addition to the moral depth, the characters in KOTOR were profoundly compelling. BioWare, the studio behind the game, managed to create a cast of characters that felt as complex and real as the people you might meet in real life. Each companion had their own motivations, backstories, and personal struggles, and they could become allies or enemies based on the player's choices. Characters like Bastila Shan, the proud and conflicted Jedi, or HK-47, the sardonic assassin droid with a penchant for meatbag humor, have become iconic in Star Wars lore. These weren't merely sidekicks, they were integral parts of the player's journey, and their arcs often paralleled or reflected the themes of the main storyline. Furthermore, the world building in KOTOR was nothing short of spectacular. The game took players to iconic planets like Tatooine and Kashyyyk, as well as new locations like Dantooine and the Sith homeworld of Korriban. Each world was richly detailed, with its own culture, history, and conflicts, allowing players to immerse themselves fully in the galaxy. The setting of KOTOR was not just a backdrop, it was a living, breathing part of the story, filled with mysteries, ancient relics, and countless secrets waiting to be uncovered. The ability to explore these planets, to delve into ancient ruins and uncover lost histories, made the galaxy feel boundless and alive. Perhaps one of the most significant aspects that set KOTOR apart was its willingness to delve into the philosophical aspects of the Force. While the movies touched on the Force as a mystical energy binding the galaxy together, KOTOR explored its intricacies in a way few other Star Wars stories have done. The game posed questions about the nature of the Force, the balance between light and dark, and the moral consequences of wielding such power. It even challenged players to consider what it meant to be a Jedi or a Sith, making them reflect on the true cost of their actions. This philosophical depth gave KOTOR a level of intellectual engagement that is rarely seen in video games, allowing players to think critically about their choices and the world around them. In a galaxy as vast as Star Wars, KOTOR was able to stand out by offering players a new perspective on the Jedi-Sith conflict. It wasn't just about good versus evil, it was about exploring the gray areas, the motivations and flaws of each side, and the realization that neither the Jedi nor the Sith were infallible. This nuanced approach to the Star Wars universe is what made KOTOR a masterpiece, and it's also what makes it nearly impossible to replicate. Modern games often struggle to capture the same level of complexity, opting instead for simplified morality systems and linear storytelling that lack the depth and richness of KOTOR's narrative. KOTOR also excelled in its use of player-driven storytelling. Unlike many games where the story is largely predetermined, KOTOR allowed players to shape the narrative through their choices. The player-driven storytelling in KOTOR is one of its defining features. In a world where so many games are bound by linear narratives, KOTOR felt like a revelation. Players could genuinely alter the course of events, choose alliances, and affect outcomes in ways that felt impactful. Whether it was deciding the fate of an entire village or making a moral stand in the midst of a galactic struggle, KOTOR empowered players to take control of the story. This sense of agency wasn't limited to big, obvious choices. It was present in smaller, everyday decisions that added depth to the player's experience. The game's structure didn't hold players to a strict path. Instead, it allowed them to explore the galaxy at their own pace, gathering allies, uncovering secrets, and developing their character. The freedom to wander through different star systems, encountering unique cultures and histories on each planet, gave players a sense of discovery that few games could offer. Each decision, whether moral or strategic, influenced how the story unfolded, and players had to live with the consequences. This meant that no two playthroughs were exactly the same, and it gave players a profound sense of ownership over their journey. At the heart of KOTOR's greatness is its central plot twist, which remains one of the most memorable moments in video game history. This twist wasn't just a gimmick, it was a revelation that fundamentally changed the way players viewed their character, their choices, and the story as a whole. It forced players to reevaluate everything they had done up to that point, adding layers of complexity and meaning to the narrative. This twist is difficult to replicate because it was so intricately woven into the fabric of the story, perfectly aligning with the themes of identity, redemption, and the struggle between light and dark. It wasn't just a shocking moment, it was a pivotal shift that elevated KOTOR from a great game to a legendary one. The twist also underscored the game's exploration of personal identity and transformation. In KOTOR, players aren't just spectators, they are active participants in a journey of self-discovery. The game forces players to confront their character's past, question their motivations, and decide who they want to become. This theme of transformation is deeply resonant, and it's part of what makes KOTOR feel so powerful. Many games allow players to create a character and shape their story, but few do it with the emotional depth and narrative sophistication of KOTOR. This journey of self-discovery is what makes the story so memorable and adds a layer of personal connection that modern games often struggle to achieve. One of the most striking aspects of KOTOR is its commitment to atmosphere. Every location, from the bustling cityscape of Coruscant to the haunting ruins of Dantooine, was meticulously crafted to evoke a sense of wonder and mystery. The attention to detail in each setting was unparalleled, making the galaxy feel both familiar and completely new. The game's sound design and music further enhanced the experience, drawing players into the world with a mix of iconic Star Wars motifs and original compositions that captured the grandeur and melancholy of the Old Republic era. This immersive atmosphere is a big part of why KOTOR resonates so strongly with players, as it made the galaxy feel alive and vibrant in a way that few games have managed to replicate. KOTOR's dialogue and character interactions also set it apart. Unlike many games where dialogue is merely a means of progressing the plot, KOTOR made conversations a central part of the experience. Each conversation had weight, and the dialogue choices allowed players to shape their relationships with companions and influence their own path. The characters didn't simply serve as quest givers or exposition tools, they felt like real people with their own motivations, personalities, and struggles. Conversations could be tense, humorous, or deeply emotional, and they often revealed new layers of character or plot. This focus on meaningful dialogue added a level of intimacy and realism that made players feel like they were truly living in the Star Wars universe. The companions in KOTOR were more than just side characters, they were fully realized individuals with their own arcs and personal growth. From the steadfast warrior Car Thonasi to the conflicted Jedi Bastila, each companion brought a unique perspective to the story and enriched the player's journey. The dynamic between the player character and their companions was shaped by the player's choices, and these relationships evolved over time based on the player's actions. This made each interaction feel significant, as players could see the impact of their choices not just on the story, but on the people around them. The depth of these relationships is one of the reasons why KOTOR's characters are so beloved, and it's a testament to the game's ability to create an emotional connection with players. Another critical element that contributes to KOTOR's enduring legacy is its balance between storytelling and gameplay. The combat system, while turn-based, was engaging and offered a strategic depth that complemented the narrative. Players could customize their characters, experiment with different abilities, and tailor their playstyle to match their chosen path. This balance between narrative and gameplay allowed players to feel fully immersed in the Star Wars universe, as every battle and every decision felt like a natural extension of the story. Unlike many modern games, which often prioritize either storytelling or gameplay, KOTOR managed to strike a perfect balance, allowing players to experience the best of both worlds. KOTOR also embraced the theme of legacy, exploring the impact of ancient history on the present and the cyclical nature of the Jedi-Sith conflict. The game's story was deeply rooted in the past, with players uncovering relics of a bygone era and learning about the ancient struggles that shaped the galaxy. This theme of legacy added a sense of weight and importance to the player's journey, as they were not just fighting for their own future, but for the future of an entire galaxy. The game's willingness to explore these themes made it feel grand and mythic, capturing the essence of Star Wars in a way that few games have managed to replicate. This sense of legacy and connection to the larger Star Wars mythos is part of what makes KOTOR feel so significant. The game wasn't just a standalone story, it was a part of the broader Star Wars universe, and it enriched that universe in meaningful ways. KOTOR's exploration of legacy wasn't just confined to history books or ancient relics, it was woven into the fabric of the player's journey. Every character, every location, and every decision carried the weight of the galaxy's past, making the player feel like they were part of a much larger, interconnected world. This sense of depth and history is a rare quality in games, and it's one of the reasons KOTOR is so hard to replicate. In many games, the world feels like a stage set up solely for the player's story, but KOTOR managed to create a galaxy that felt like it had existed long before the player arrived and would continue to evolve after they left. This sense of continuity made the story feel profound, as players were reminded that they were just one piece in the vast tapestry of the Star Wars universe. Another defining aspect of KOTOR was its ability to create genuine emotional investment. Players weren't just progressing through a series of quests, they were living through a journey filled with triumphs, losses, and moral dilemmas that forced them to confront their own values. The game wasn't afraid to put players in difficult situations where there were no easy answers, and it often made them question their own beliefs about right and wrong. This emotional depth is what sets KOTOR apart from many other games. By making players care deeply about their character, their companions, and the galaxy as a whole, KOTOR was able to create a truly unforgettable experience. The galaxy KOTOR presented was not just a battleground between Jedi and Sith, but a complex, living world filled with ordinary people affected by the conflicts around them. The game introduced players to countless characters who had their own lives, dreams, and struggles, from refugees fleeing war to merchants trying to make a living on hostile planets. This focus on the everyday people of the galaxy gave players a unique perspective on the impact of the Jedi-Sith conflict. It wasn't just about grand battles and epic duels, it was about the ripple effects of those conflicts on the galaxy's citizens. This added a layer of realism and humanity to the story, making the galaxy feel alive in a way that is rare in games. KOTOR's commitment to exploring the lives of ordinary people also allowed it to delve into the darker aspects of the Star Wars universe. While the films often presented a simplified version of the galaxy, where good and evil were clearly defined, KOTOR embraced the complexities and moral ambiguities of war. Players encountered morally gray characters who didn't fit neatly into the roles of hero or villain. and they were often forced to make decisions that had no clear right or wrong answer. This willingness to embrace the shades of gray in the Star Wars universe gave KOTOR a level of maturity and sophistication that few games could match. It wasn't just a story of heroes and villains, it was a story about the human and alien cost of war, and the difficult choices that people must make in times of crisis. One of the reasons KOTOR's depth and complexity are so difficult to replicate is that they require a level of storytelling that goes beyond simple plot points and character arcs. BioWare's writers and designers approached the game with a deep respect for the Star Wars universe, and they crafted a story that felt both authentic and original. This wasn't a story that simply borrowed elements from the films, it was a unique narrative that explored new themes and ideas while staying true to the spirit of Star Wars. This balance of originality and authenticity is incredibly challenging to achieve, and it's one of the reasons why KOTOR stands as a masterpiece in gaming. Many games attempt to capture the magic of Star Wars, but few are able to do so with the same level of respect and creativity. The gameplay mechanics in KOTOR also contributed to its unique appeal. The turn-based combat system, while rooted in traditional role-playing mechanics, allowed for a level of strategy and planning that complemented the game's narrative depth. Players had to think carefully about their actions, managing their resources, choosing the right abilities, and planning their attacks to maximize their effectiveness. This emphasis on strategy and planning made every battle feel meaningful, as players were constantly challenged to think critically and adapt to different situations. The combat was not simply an obstacle to progress, it was an integral part of the story, reinforcing the sense of danger and challenge that pervaded the galaxy. The progression system in KOTOR was also a key part of its appeal. As players leveled up, they could customize their character's abilities, choosing from a variety of force powers, combat skills, and attributes. This allowed players to create a character that reflected their personal playstyle and moral choices. Whether they wanted to become a powerful Jedi Guardian, a skilled diplomat, or a ruthless Sith Lord, the game offered a level of customization that made each playthrough feel unique. This personalization of the character not only enhanced the gameplay experience, but also deepened the player's connection to their character. It was their story, their journey, and their choices that shaped the galaxy's future. KOTOR's pacing was another element that contributed to its lasting appeal. The game took its time, allowing players to explore each world, engage in meaningful conversations, and uncover secrets at their own pace. There was no rush to reach the end. The journey itself was the reward. This slower, more deliberate pacing allowed players to fully immerse themselves in the story and the world, making every moment feel significant. In an era where many games prioritize fast-paced action and constant stimulation, KOTOR's willingness to let players slow down and savor the experience is a rare and valuable quality. The ending of KOTOR, like its twist, was another powerful moment that solidified the game's status as a masterpiece. The culmination of the player's choices, the final confrontation with the main antagonist, and the resolution of the character arcs all came together in a way that felt deeply satisfying. The ending wasn't just a conclusion to the story, it was a reflection of the player's journey, the choices they had made, and the impact they had on the galaxy. This sense of closure and fulfillment is difficult to achieve in any story, let alone a video game, and it's a testament to the skill and dedication of BioWare's team. In the years since KOTOR's release, many games have attempted to capture its magic, but few have succeeded. The complexity of its characters, the depth of its world building, and the moral ambiguity of its story are qualities that are difficult to replicate, even with modern technology and larger budgets. KOTOR was a product of a unique moment in gaming history, a time when developers were willing to take risks and push the boundaries of what video games could achieve. It was a game that respected its audience, trusted them to engage with complex ideas, and rewarded them with a story that was both intellectually and emotionally satisfying. KOTOR's legacy endures not only because of its impact on Star Wars lore, but also because of the way it changed the gaming industry. It set a new standard for storytelling in video games, proving that games could be more than just entertainment, they could be art. It showed that players were willing to engage with deep, meaningful narratives, and it paved the way for future RPGs that would build on its foundations.